Today we're putting the spotlight on the Kubernetes app. The Kubernetes app enables platform engineering teams to easily ensure the health, performance, and security of multi-cloud clusters. You can see here, I got 3 clusters, 11 nodes, a lot of workloads, a lot of pods. Dynatrace automatically gives me health indication. Looks like everything is green. Let's jump right into it. So Dynatrace really tells me if my clusters are healthy, secure, also appropriately sized and available for application teams to deploy their workloads. What I think is really nice, if I see this here, I got my 3 clusters. Dynatrace actually immediately tells me that there are actually some unhealthy workload warning signals. Now, you might not be that familiar with Kubernetes, and it's I'm sure many of you that are responsible don't know everything in Kubernetes, but the good news is we brought explanation to you. So you can click here on explain warning signal, which means we're now using Davis CoPilot to explain what unhealthy actually means with an explanation, typical root causes, and remediation steps. So especially, right, sometimes when time is of essence and you need to get quick answers to things that you don't see every day, I think building the Davis CoPilot into the app and explaining things for you is really cool. Now, let me show you some other things. So I got 3 clusters, which is great. I can also click on utilization. I get an overview about CPU, requests, limits, Slack, especially for you that are responsible for making sure your clusters are healthy and properly sized. This is really important. You can also see that there's many more columns to be added to this particular table. Add whatever you need and customize the view, like the number of pods, the number of services and containers. I can do the same thing not only for clusters, but also for nodes, for namespaces, right? Everything is here. So you get a similar look and feel across all of these different Kubernetes resources. Now, here's a cool thing. We went from health to utilization. So now I'm on the node level. If I click on metadata, I get an overview of where these nodes are running, the kubelet version. You can also see node labels. There's 17 on there. Now, if you click on it, this is really nice. You can immediately see what type of architecture, instance type, capacity, regions. So what you can, for instance, immediately do, I can say, hey, instance type T3, you can filter. You can see you can filter, you can exclude. But if you click on filter, you immediately get it filtered down to all of those nodes that are of type T3X large, because clicking on it will add the node label as a filter on the top. And if you are doing this even further, right, I could say, maybe I just want to have those in a particular region. Here we go. Seems all of them are in the same region. This works for node labels, for node annotations. It's all the same. And obviously also works for instance, namespaces. Same thing, you can filter by your labels. The namespaces you can see here, you also have your quota settings, your utilization, and again, your health. Now, let's quickly go back to my cluster. If I click on the cluster, like we had before, let me pick EKS in this example. If you're responsible for that cluster, we give you direct overview of what's happening on that cluster, information, the properties we talked about earlier, and very importantly, ownership information. So we are picking out and pulling out ownership information from your metadata on the cluster, namespace level, node level, workload level, pod level, and we can then show you who is responsible for this particular, in this case, cluster. This is very handy if you need to figure out who to talk to in case there's a problem. This data can obviously also be used in automation, so you can automatically notify people. Utilization, that's your, your CPU, your memory. Let me just go to a little bit of a bigger time frame. CPU, memory, pods, workload types, container events, very important. It seems we keep having some out of memory kills here, some restarts. All of this is available. Now, this is very nice, logs. So we are giving you logs in context, meaning that these are all the logs that are coming in on this particular cluster. Now there are 41 million records. Now the thing is, do you want to dig through the 41 million records? Probably not, but you want to have the ones that are worth looking at. So this is why we have recommended queries. You will see the recommended queries in different parts of the product. In this case, it tells me, hey, there are some warnings and errors in the last 24 hours, so you may want to look at those. One click, I get the right query, and I get to see all of these errors here, right, with the full details of the error itself, the content, as well as all of the properties. Where was it captured from which particular cluster? We obviously know this. Which process, which namespace with which application. All very simple in here. Now, what else do we have? Events. So these are all the Kubernetes events. So we can see how Kubernetes has been doing over the last, in this case, 24 hours. When it deployed something, you know, how many pods it were killed, pulling images. So these are all of your Kubernetes events that you have over time. Problems is a good section as well. Dynatrace automatically detects problems when they're impacting your end users or your SLOs, and then you would have problems here. Fortunately, this cluster didn't have any issues. SLOs, this is the place where your SREs may define an SLO on the health of your cluster. So it seems we have a memory utilization efficiency for this cluster where we have a certain target. Any type of SLOs will work. In this case, we are on a cluster level, but you can specify SLOs on cluster and going all the way up the stack, all the way to your end user's application. Now, vulnerabilities is very interesting. We also bring security scanning into the picture here. That means we automatically tell you that on this cluster, you got 3 critical vulnerabilities. Whether they happen on code level, as it seems the critical ones do, whether they are third-party libraries, or whether they are coming in because you're running outdated or vulnerable components in your cluster, they all show up here. This is automatically done through Dynatrace's vulnerability detection. And then the last tab, additional telemetry. This is where we are showing you any additional telemetry that was sent in on the cluster level. So this was it for just analyzing clusters. I want to give you one more example because I think that's going to be important for you to know, and what you will do as you are making sure that the workloads that your engineers deploy are running successful. Just as before, we have all the different deployments here. There's a long list here. There's different ways to filter, whether it's by namespace, whether it is by name, or you can again do all the filtering also on all the labels, right? So this is still the same as before. Now, in my case, I want to show you a particular example. It's the add service. The add service here runs in the prod namespace. So if I click on the add service, then I get to see the workload in all of its detail. You can see similar navigation, similar data. Now in this case, focusing on workload, CPU, memory, and pods. If you have either OpenTelemetry to ingest traces, or if you're using the one agent for instrumentation, we here get automatic links to application observability. That means this is the place where you see how many requests are coming in, what's the failure rate on a request level, what's the response time, and from here you can go to the service and then to the traces. Now, very important on workloads and on pods, who owns these particular components? Right? We have ownership, and in this case it seems there's 2 teams responsible. Ninja for security and operations, and the key development team for development and line of business. And just as before, we know who these people are and how to contact them. And if there are vulnerabilities, and it seems we have 15, then they might be good to connect. So it's always good to have this information here, but also it's available through automation. That means when Dynatrace detects a vulnerability or a problem or an SLO violation, you can use our Dynatrace workflows to then contact the people that are responsible. Now, quickly going through some of the other tabs here. Utilization is interesting. Again, looking over the last 24 hours. Now, logs, remember, earlier we saw logs on the cluster level. Now we see the logs on that workload level. And you can see in the last 24 hours, we had 27,900 logs, mostly green info, but then we had a section here where we had some error logs. This was also where Dynatrace detected the problem, a JavaScript error rate increase. That means this was a problem towards the end user, and it is automatically correlating it and causating it to this add service that has to do with this JavaScript error. So what can I do? I can scroll down, and as you can see now, the recommended queries now are also including show me all the logs for this particular problem. So I can click on run query, and then I get to see all of the logs that came in on this particular time frame when the problem happened. I can also then switch easily between these recommendations. I can also say just show me the last 100 error logs. So I'm coming back again to error logs, and just as we had it before, you can see the details of the error. It seems there was a null pointer exception happening here, probably something we don't really want, but we know it's happening. Dynatrace captures it, Dynatrace makes us aware of it. And what's also really nice, we even have the trace ID here. So if you're capturing logs and traces, then we can say open field width, and this is where you can then open up the log in the context of the end-to-end trace. Right? So all of this is possible, everything in context, everything with some simple clicks, and we just want to surface the data that you need at the time when you need it. Events on that particular ad service, we can see that this is when the problem happened earlier, right? We had this challenge, it seems, when the app was killed because the liveliness probe failed. You can see all the details here. Problems, we should see that one problem we had earlier, exactly. Vulnerabilities, we have vulnerabilities on this particular component as well. But remember, we're always showing the relevant data in context. My context is now the ad service. So this is what I want to see, the 15 vulnerabilities. Other than that, this component right now looks very healthy. Everything is green. That's great. Now remember, you have the options in these tables to customize. There's a lot of columns that are here that you can add depending on what type of information you're seeking. Now, let's go back to my overview. We have 3 clusters, 11 nodes, 31 namespaces. How are these clusters getting onboarded? Well, on the top right, you have your add cluster. Add cluster is where you're guided through onboarding a new cluster for observability with Dynatrace. You pick your distribution, you select your observability option, whether you just want to do Kubernetes platform monitoring, whether you also want to have application observability, or whether you want to have full stack observability. Then you just scroll down and follow the instructions, enabling log analytics, some configuration on the cluster, how to install the Dynatrace operator, generating the tokens, and then in the end, once everything is deployed, you just wait for data to come in. All right, so this is how the onboarding works. And once you onboard it, as you saw earlier, you get automated health checks, which is very important. And then we guide you through where potential problems are or to the data that you need. Now, last but not least, the data is great in the app, but we also have ready-made dashboards for you. Let me open up the Kubernetes namespace workloads ready-made dashboard that comes with the app. And what this does, it shows you the relevant data, whether it's metrics or logs for the selected cluster, namespace, and type. So this is a completely dynamic dashboard where you can select your cluster, you can select your namespace, you can select what type of workload type, and then you get all of the details here. Right? Similar to what you saw, some of the data we saw earlier in the app, but now all nicely in a dashboard. Now, why did we put this here? Why is this interesting? Well, because we know that some of the data you don't want to have on multiple screens in our app, but you want to have it nicely organized on a dashboard. And we also think this is a great starting point. So if you like this, but you want to slightly modify it, like with any other dashboard, you can just duplicate it, then it becomes your copy of the dashboard, and then you can just modify it to your needs. All right, so this was today's episode on the App Spotlight for Kubernetes. And I hope this gives you some guidance, some use cases on how to navigate through the app. And all the best. See you in the next video.